Hi, and welcome to this CrowdValley webinar entitled Introduction to Building Your Online Finance Marketplace. My name is Paul Higgins, I'm the CTO of the company, and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar for about 40 minutes or so, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. By way of an agenda, this is what we're going to cover today. I'll just start by going over what we want to kind of get out of this webinar, what we want to kind of run through, and that will include a bit about the kind of audience that we expect for this webinar. I'll just mention a little bit about who we are and about our experiences in this market. I'll talk a bit in the section called the Global Online Finance Market about the market, the industry in general, so that we can get a sense of the same kind of vocabulary and the same words, and just kind of discuss a little bit about the market in general, so that especially if you're coming to this as a developer, you can get a bit more context for the kinds of processes and marketplaces that we'll be discussing. Then in the section called Getting Started, I will go through the high-level steps that you will need to take into account as you start thinking about planning for building and launching your own online finance marketplace. I'll talk about what we think of as the critical step, which is one of those points in the group of things that you'll be thinking about. And then I'll run through some examples of typical processes that we see in online finance marketplaces like crowdfunding platforms or real estate platforms or peer-to-peer lending platforms. And I'll show some screenshots of templates and some of our customer sites that you can have a look at, so that you get a bit of a sense of how those can be implemented. And then I'll just write out and discuss a couple of resources that you can look up after the webinar in the final stage, and that includes our website crowdvalley.com, and then a couple of others that I'll talk about at the end. So this is what we had in mind for this webinar. It's basically a kind of discussion about what to have in mind, what to cover when you are first thinking about creating an online finance marketplace. And so we talk about online finance being a kind of fairly broad term which encompasses crowdfunding of various different models, peer-to-peer lending, real estate, securities. It could also be kind of business lending, or it could be private placement kind of platforms, or angel investment kind of matchmaking platforms, venture capital platforms, and it can talk about it can really include equity models, debt models, kind of variations on those sort of hybrid models, but in general we're talking about online finance platforms, marketplaces where there are certain assets, there are certain kind of companies or projects or assets of some sort that are available for investors or lenders to invest in. So that's the kind of marketplace that we have in mind here. And this particular webinar is going to be fairly introductory in that sense, so it's not going to go into any real technical detail about how to implement in software one of these platforms or how to work with our APIs. And we will be running additional webinars, the first one being from about a month's time, to talk more specifically about the technical side. So we envisage that if you're interested in this, then you're probably going to be either a developer who's been asked to set up an online finance marketplace to actually build the site, or a business professional, perhaps somebody in the finance sector, or somebody in starting a new business, or working within an existing financial services organization, for example, who's looking to move some of their operations online. So in general, you're in that kind of planning phase of getting ready to build and launch your platform. just briefly about CrowdValley. So as a company, we've been going since 2012. We were actually a spin out of another company called GrowVC. And so the management team has been working together initially as part of the GrowVC company, and then latterly as part of CrowdValley since 2009. We have been supporting customers to build these kinds of online finance marketplace platforms for 5-6 years now. And so the CrowdValley product is a public API that contains all of the online building blocks for creating an online finance marketplace. So part of that is the ability to, for example, register users, to onboard investors, to set up offerings, to manage and track investors' interest in various offerings. And also included in the API is several dozen different third-party services which support the online investment process in some way. So, for example, we have in the API integrations with payments companies, with KYC, AML, or investor accreditation type services, data bureaus for credit scoring data, and various other kinds of modules like that are available through our API. So this is the CrowdValley product. It's the API and then a supporting admin portal. So this is essentially a screenshot on the right hand side of the admin portal. So our customers, when building a platform on top of our API, they would have access to this backend admin portal, which basically kind of allows them to manage and look after the operations, the processes on a finance platform. So, for example, you can see a kind of activity timeline of what's been happening on the customer site, what users have been doing, and you can see various other things which I'll get to later on. So as well as the core product and the admin portal, the API, we also provide front-end templates. So if you are looking to set up an online finance marketplace and you're really starting from scratch, then you can take some of our front-end templates. So these are essentially kind of ready to use finance sites which you can take the code for and build on top of. We also provide access to a network of certified developer partners. So if you don't have your own development team or you're not a developer yourself, then you can get in touch with partners of ours who have worked with us in the past and who have gone through a process of building these sites. And then we also provide various tutorials, code examples, and so on to help with the process. So as an example, this is a screenshot of our API documentation. You can, if you want to kind of get into the detail about how the API works, you can access this page from our website at crowdvalley.com, and you can see what comes in the package when you start working with it. So just thinking about the kinds of marketplaces that we're talking about here, these are actually some headline figures from a company called Deal Index, which is a kind of data aggregator for the online finance market. So the current global securities market is vast. It can include kind of private placements. It can include everything pretty much lower than the IPO level, and so we've seen great growth in terms of crowdfunding platforms, activity, peer-to-peer lending platforms, and some of these headline figures will be probably not a surprise to you who's interested in this market. So we're seeing a lot of activity in platforms all the way around the world in terms of number of offerings closed, number of funding rounds closed, number of investors, number of jobs created, and so on. And that goes both for kind of the equity and crowdfunding side, and then also for debt type platforms in various different asset groups. So clearly kind of lots of opportunities for new platforms to emerge, and also for existing finance operations to move into more of this kind of online arena. In various different asset groups. So clearly kind of lots of opportunities for new platforms to emerge, and also for existing finance operations to move into more of this kind of online arena. So if you're kind of considering starting one of these platforms, setting up a new online finance platform, then you will probably find yourself on this diagram somewhere. So this kind of matrix is one way of thinking about the online funding market in a way. So the x-axis, you can see the different kinds of models. So you have debt on the left and equity on the right, with various kind of hybrid models in the middle. Going on the y-axis, you've got the type of investor. So at the bottom, you've got the smaller retail or consumer investor. In the middle, you've got the kind of accredited or perhaps sort of angel investor type, so an individual that might have some experience, some sophistication, and then going up to the institutional investors, so the funds and the family offices and the banks and so on. So you can kind of get a sense of where your platform might fit in, and then if you can just about see the text going kind of into the screen on the z-axis, you've got different ways of thinking about how you might differentiate yourself as well. So you have some platforms that are focusing on a particular region, for example. Some are global versus more local or more restricted to one territory. You've got sector specialism, you've got different kinds of model syndication and so on, and then you've got the kind of different ways of integrating with other services and other providers on more of a vertical basis. So it's kind of the end of the discussion of the sector in general, but I thought it would be helpful just to kind of run through that so that you get a sense of where you might fit in general in the market, and just so that we have the same kind of terms in mind when I go through the next steps. Responsibilities that you might have when setting up a platform for the first time. So obviously those who are working essentially on their own, who don't work with CrowdValley, would have to fill in, would have to handle all of the tasks on the right hand side as well. So that's something to bear in mind. But in any case, you've got the list of kind of requirements or tasks on the left-hand side of the screen, which are your responsibility. So these are the sorts of things that you would need to run through in order to kind of get your online finance marketplace up and running. So the first one, just going down into the business setup row, so regulatory licenses. So this is, we're handling real investors' money. So this is obviously a regulated activity. It's always going to be your responsibility to understand and identify the relevant regulations that apply to your type of business. Whilst CrowdValley can support in providing some technical materials about how the back-end systems work and so on, it always falls on our customers to apply for the relevant licenses if required, and ensure that the operations of the platform follow the regulatory requirements. So that's step one, and that's probably one of the most important and one of the one of the most important steps to do early on as well, because if you are interacting with regulators, especially for the first time, then it can be a process that can take some time. So when you're thinking about starting an online finance marketplace, you should leave yourself plenty of time to go through that process and really start that as early as you can. Business model and market knowledge. So this is really around, this is kind of which sort of niche or which area of the market you want to focus on. So which kind of investors, which kind of assets, which kind of business model, and essentially sort of where you fit into to that kind of chart that I showed you just now. In terms of the product development, you would need to develop specifications for what we think of as a front-end site. So the front-end site is the customer-facing site. It's the platform that users go to register, to create their profile, to make their investment decisions, and so this is kind of really the set of requirements for building out that platform. Part of that is going to be UI and UX, so user interface work and user experience, to define how you want users to go through the site. So how you want to handle the registration process, how many steps will there be in it, and how quickly can you allow users to go through those sorts of processes. And typically our customers would have at least a visual designer, or if not, then a kind of front-end developer to put together that site. It can also be helpful to have a project manager, especially with some technical knowledge, so not necessarily a developer, but a project manager that is able to is able to manage a development project, an IT development project. Someone perhaps with a knowledge of the kind of agile development processes, for example, can be quite helpful. Typically they would be responsible for managing the front-end development resources, so the designer, the front-end developer, and the user experience expert as well. And then for launch, you would need to have set up live accounts with any third-party service that you want to pull in. So that could be a payments company, for example. It could be a ID verification kind of service company, or it could be an accreditation service. So if you are using those kinds of third-party services, then you would need to have an account set up with them in order to kind of launch. You'd need, of course, your own domain, so that would be the domain where your front-end site lives. And then the only thing that you would need with us is a subscription to our back-end system. And then everything on the right-hand side is covered by CrowdValley, so you don't need to worry about the admin functionality or the admin design and admin functions. You don't need to worry about server setup or data access or back-end developers or third-party service integrations, and you don't need to worry about hosting, maintenance, data security, backups, and all of that kind of thing. So all of that is managed by us, and then you're focusing on the front-end kind of implementation. So I want to focus on this point, the specifications work for the front-end site, and so I say this is the critical step, and it's not critical in the sense that it is the kind of only, it's the sufficient step for getting a successful platform out, but it is probably the single step that has the biggest impact on the timeline of your development process. So a well done specifications kind of document can be the difference between getting a site up and running within 2 months and getting it up and running within 2 years. So and this is of course sort of standard software development ideas, of course, but there are some specific things to think about when going through the specifications work for one of these platforms. So I want to go through that in a bit more detail. This is the kind of these are the kinds of sections that we think about when working with somebody to create a specifications document. So these are really the kind of the key points that you would want to think through when creating your own online finance platform. So first point, high level concept. So what kind of marketplace is it? What kind of deals are going to be listed there? What kind of users? What are the rules around the users? What are the regulations? What kind of model is it? That would go into high level concept, and that's usually something that you would have in mind already when you're thinking about creating a platform. The key processes. So what are the critical kind of processes that need to be enabled by the platform? So it's things like user registration or investor onboarding investors, or making investments for in the role of an investor, or it's the kind of closing and settlement admin process, those sorts of things. And then once you have a good sense of what those processes look like, and I'll go through a few examples of those in a few minutes, then the rest of the document should really sort of fall out of those first requirements. So front-end sitemap. So what is the list of pages that will go into your front-end site, so your customer-facing site, and you would want to make sure that you have all of the pages that are required for each of the key processes. Point 4, the functional specification. So what specific functions do users need to be able to do on each page of the sitemap? So, for example, if you have a deal kind of overview page on the sitemap, so a page which shows all of the information about a company that is available for investment, then what kind of user functions should a user be able to do on that page? So it might be to make an investment offer, it might be to add the company to your kind of watch list, it could be to post a message in the user forum, for example, those sorts of things. Point 5 on the data models. Data models, really, we mean what information needs to be stored in the system, in the database, and what information is shown to users on the front end. So going back to the example of a company overview page, what information do you actually want to show to potential investors there? So do you want to show financial history? Do you want to show kind of documents like annual reports or financial statements? Do you want to show kind of media like video content or SlideShare presentations, for example? Are there any kind of key facts or categories that you want to bring out? Like, is it a particular type of investment in your marketplace? Like in the real estate sector, for example, is it a residential or is it a commercial type investment? Things like that. And then you've got the point 6, the wireframes. So by this stage, if you've gone through points 1 to 5, then the wireframes it should be fairly easy for a kind of user interface developer or designer to put together. So you're basically taking the sitemap, you're taking the functional specifications and the data models, and you're doing a mock-up of every page for the site. And then finally, the test plan. The test plan is a list of instructions that can be followed to verify that a particular function is working correctly. So that can be helpful at the end of the process, once you've gone through the development process, to just make sure that everything is working as it was planned. So of course everyone is likely to have their own kind of version of this document, and some people find it useful to kind of start some of the build work before finishing this kind of document and then allow it to go a bit more organically. But what we've found is that if you can go through the process of creating this kind of specifications document in as much detail as possible at the very beginning of the process, then the development work really is possible to finish in a much shorter time. And so you may not need to go through every single step here, but at least going through this process can speed up the overall project quite significantly. So I just want to focus for the rest of this kind of presentation on the first two. I'll briefly go through a bit more about the high-level concept, and then I'm going to show a few examples of what we mean by key processes. So for the high-level concept, the kinds of things that you would want to think about are the type of asset that is being offered in the platform. So is it a company, is it a project, is it a property, is it a fund? What is the kind of underlying asset that is being offered as a kind of deal on the platform? What is the funding model? So is it an equity-based model where investors are purchasing shares in the asset and expecting some kind of return based on an equity holding? Is it a sort of debt model where your investors are really lenders who are putting money into a company, for example, and then the return is an interest rate offered by the borrowing company? Is it some kind of hybrid where you might have a mix of equity and debt? Is it kind of grant-based, for example? Is there any other kind of asset, any other kind of funding model coming into play? Are there any kind of syndicates at work? I mean, are there any institutional investors kind of supporting the deal based on money that goes in from users, for example? So those sorts of questions. User roles. So what are the different types of users that you will need to manage or you'll need to set up on the front end? So a user role might be an investor, for example. So an investor is a kind of user role who is able to make an investment or make an investment offer. You might have a fundraiser role. So if you are setting up a platform where it's more of a kind of open marketplace, where you have fundraisers on one side of the marketplace and investors on the other, then you would have that kind of fundraiser role, and then the fundraiser would be providing some of the deals, some of the offerings. You might have a kind of broker user, so a broker who is providing some way of kind of signing off the deal or closing the deal at the end of the fundraising process. You might have a legal representative or someone who is screening and signing off a deal before it gets published onto the platform. So it can be helpful to just run through those and figure out what all the different types of users are. And then handling capital. So do you actually want people to move money, real money, around it through the platform? Do you want people to kind of handle the money moving process offline, or do you want it to be fully online? And this will probably come back to the kind of assets that you're listing. So for smaller assets, say kind of startup companies, for example, where the average investment offer might be just a few $1,000s, for example, you might want to make that very efficient and allow people to process that kind of money online using a payment service. But if you're handling larger funds, for example, or you're handling later stage companies, then you might have a much larger ticket size, and then in that case it might be more effective to handle capital offline. So third-party services, what kind of support do you need as part of the online process? So do you need to be able to handle payments? Do you need to be able to do an online anti-money laundering check on an investor? Do you need to be able to do an online credit scoring kind of verification of a fundraising company? So these sorts of services, what do you want to cover there? And then what are the regulatory requirements? So that's a kind of larger question, but worth going through at this stage. And then thinking about section 2, the key processes. So on the left-hand side are some typical processes that we see a lot in a lot of different types of online finance platform. Things like deal origination. So how do you get deals onto the platform? Is this, do you have a fundraiser user which is submitting a deal and kind of providing the deal information, which you as the platform operator is then are then screening and then publishing, or is it the case that you are the one that has the access to the deals and then you're adding them yourselves in the kind of admin role? Investor onboarding. So how do investors complete the registration process? What information do you need to collect about an investor before you consider them ready to invest, which could be ready to move money or ready to make an offer? You've got the whole section around accreditation, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and in general kind of identity verification. So that addresses the issue of how you ensure that users are suitable in some sense. Usually this is a regulatory point, so it's usually the case that you have to know certain information about an investor before you are allowed to before they are allowed to make an investment. So you would want to make sure that you understand the regulatory requirements for allowing investors on the platform, for example. It could also relate to the fundraiser side as well. So you would want to make sure that if a company is coming to you and asking to go onto the platform and raise capital on your platform, that that you know who they are, that they're not, that they have a real company and that they are a suitable type of user as well. Loading user wallet. So how do people actually put money into their account in order to start investing? And then finding offerings. So how do those investors find the most relevant offerings, the most kind of interesting offerings for them? So some sites have pages where you can see essentially the complete list of deals, of offerings, and then the user is able to kind of search and filter through. So you can search perhaps by sector or by location or by category of some sort. Some platforms have a kind of portfolio approach, so that an investor would say, I'm interested in this kind of deal. I want to invest $50,000, for example. I want to invest in deals with a credit score of B or A in the New York region, for example, and then that becomes the kind of request that then filters through, and then you might want the match to be made by a kind of algorithm searching based on those preferences. Making an investment. So how do investors actually go ahead and make an investment or make an offer? Closing and settlement, which is around the requirements for signing off or closing an offering. So that is usually a question of documentation. So what do you need to know about all of the investors before you can finally sign them off? How do you provide evidence for the deal? How do you need to create a share certificate, for example? Do you need to register the deal with a financial authority in your country? And then post-transaction communication. So what do you need to distribute to investors after a deal, and then what kind of requirements do you have, ongoing requirements to provide information to those investors? So do you need to provide tax information, for example? Do you need to provide reports or annual updates based on the fundraising activity? So it's not the full set by any means, but these are kind of typical processes that you would fairly likely have in a lot of online finance platforms. So I'm just going to go through a few examples of these processes, and then we can have a bit of time for questions afterwards as well. So thinking about deal origination, these screenshots that I'll show you now are all taken from CrowdValley templates or customer sites that we've worked on. So a deal origination process might include something like this. So in this particular case, this platform has a fundraiser type user, and they have this page, which is a page for a fundraiser to submit a deal for screening. So the fundraiser would complete this form. In this case, this is a kind of institutional size deal. So they would be writing about the deal overview, the deal sponsor, the development impact, the deal size, and so on, the closing date. And then you can see along the top you've got a couple of steps. So one of them is to write about the co-investors that are already on board, and then a few other things. So this is one way of handling deal origination. You essentially have a category of user, type of user, who is submitting deals for you to review, you as the admin user, and then you can decide whether the deal is appropriate for the marketplace, and then you can approve it and then publish it so that investors can see. The other way is that you can actually use the admin backend that we provide at the CrowdValley admin portal. So this is used in the case where you, as the operator of the platform, have access to all of the deals, and you are just adding deals to the database and then pushing them up to the front end sites, to the customer sites. So you would simply go into the admin portal, and then you would create an offering through the admin portal. So you would put the same sort of information as the previous form, but it would be all done by an admin user. Investor onboarding. So the investor onboarding process is kind of an area where user experience and guys and sort of designers often get involved, because it's really probably the most important process, especially in the early days when you're first launching, is just the process of getting investors on, getting more and more users. Typically, you could start by having a kind of very short form like this, which just allows you to get the very minimum amount of information from a new user. So in this case, you're just asking for email and password, and that allows you to get their information, and then actually kind of completing the onboarding process is done as a second step. As an example, you might want to make sure that if you do want to collect a lot of information from an investor, if you need to ask a lot of information that might take them a while to collect, then you could have this kind of two-step process where you have a very short form just to collect their basic details, and then as a second step you can ask for any more information that you might need. So this is an example of the second step. So a new investor might have completed that first small form, and then the next time they log in, they would be given this additional form, which is a lot more detailed and has all of the information that you would need as the admin user to sign off or kind of accept a user into the platform. And then part of this might be something that's required by your regulator as well. This is perhaps a kind of form that would be a bit overwhelming for a new user if this is the first thing they have to fill in. But if they do it as a two-step process, then you can often get more people in. And then if they do get stuck on this form for any reason, if they're not able to fill it out correctly because they don't understand some of the questions, then you at least have their email address so that you can follow up separately. Thinking about accreditation and in general sort of ensuring the suitability of your investor users, we've got a couple of steps that you could go through to kind of sign off an investor. This form is actually based on a UK customer when they're asking the individual to say whether they are a high net worth individual, and then declare which kind of high net worth individual they are. And then you may also want to require them to upload kind of documentation to support their application to be an investor. So in this case, they've requested a copy of the passport and a utility bill, which is something that can be added online. But then there's also various other kind of more efficient options as well. So going back to our admin portal, this view is the list of all of the users who are in the system, and if you can see on the little drop-down box on the right-hand side, there's an option called Run KYC Check, and that would run one of the third-party services, which would automatically kind of run a KYC check or an anti-money laundering check. So, for example, it would check that your user has entered an address that matches up with their name and their date of birth on an electoral roll or on a driving license database or a passport or something like that. And then going into finding offerings, making investments, this is a very typical kind of page that you would have seen on similar platforms. This page shows a list of all of the kind of live offerings or preview offerings as well, and you can see that there are various ways of filtering the information. So you could filter by which city the company is based in, or filter by credit score, for example. So this is a peer-to-peer lending example. This is a similar kind of setup for real estate. So again, you would see a full list of deals, and you have a couple of sorting options at the top. So you can sort by the most recent, by the highest target, the highest funding goal, the most popular, and then you've also got filtering options on the right hand side. So you can filter, for example, by location or the status of the funding round or the property type. And then making an investment. So you may have a kind of overview page that looks like this one, and these are the kind of functions that you might have. So kind of an invest, those are sort of buttons down the bottom, an invest button or an add to watch list button. And then kind of making an investment could be as simple as pressing an invest button and then entering how much you want to offer. It could be more complex than this. You might want to show the amount that an investor has in their wallet, for example, before they're actually able to make an investment. You might want to specify certain terms for the investment offer. So you might want to specify that there are certain conditions attached. You might want to, instead of making offers in terms of a kind of dollar amount, you might want to reserve a number of shares instead, perhaps at a kind of lower and upper bound for valuation as well. So there are various ways that you might think about allowing investors to make an offer, but those sorts of things will be quite common. And then just to touch on a few other processes that may be relevant to your platform as well. These are perhaps less common, but also kind of sometimes worth considering. So portfolio management, like how you allow an investor to kind of see a portfolio of all of their investments on your platform. Secondary trading, which is required by some regulators for certain models like peer-to-peer lending. So how do you allow an investor or borrower to resell an investment that they've made? Loan servicing, so how do you process the loan after it has been settled? So how do you move money back from the borrower to the lenders? Managing bad debt, so making sure that you're tracking repayments from the borrower to the lenders, reconciling payments, especially if you're allowing users to make payment transactions offline, and then other things around risk analysis. So how do you track the kind of the overall risk to the assets that you're offering, the valuation of the deals and those sorts of elements. And deal syndication is another interesting area, like how you kind of encourage other perhaps larger co-investors to interact with users on your platform. So may come back to some of those processes in another webinar, but I just wanted to flag up that those are sometimes worth considering as well. So all of those are managed and manageable through our admin portal, and so that's the kind of purpose of that system. So just to kind of touch on where you might want to go next for additional support, of course, our website, crowdfunding.com, has a lot of information. It has all of our API documentation, it has regulatory research, and you can also sign up for a free sandbox account, and so you can continue to build your own platform using our backend in Sandbox without paying us anything. So that's a free service. The next webinar is going to be in about a month's time, and it will be a bit more technical, so focused on developers and really kind of explaining the API. And just a few other resources that are worth checking out as well if you're looking at this for the first time. Fundingthemeshub.com is a library of free front-end templates for online finance marketplaces. They have been built by our partners, so they're all available for you if you want to start from a kind of starting point instead of building a full front-end site from scratch. And then Deal Index is a source of data analytics and research specifically for online finance marketplaces. And then other companies as part of the Grow VC group, so part of our same group, Grow Advisors, which is a consulting unit which really helps people get into the digital finance world, and then Grow VC Group, which is our parent company, which is again really kind of on top of this market. I've got a couple of minutes, about 10 minutes or so for questions, so I'm just going to kind of run through any that have come through so far. Just a few questions, there's quite a few actually, so I'll try and run through them as quickly as I can. Will the PowerPoint presentation be handed out? Yes, we'll send the PowerPoint afterwards so everyone can get access to that, and we also are recording the video, so we will put that up on our website as well, so you can see the whole webinar again if you want to, but also we'll send the PowerPoint out. A couple of other questions then. So we had one through earlier. Can we make introductions to partners to handle the development? So yes, we have a kind of network of what we think of as certified developer partners, and those are IT agencies, development agencies based around the world. We have several dozen of them, and they are kind of certified in the sense that they have completed a training course with us to understand how to work with the API, how to build one of these platforms, how to complete the specifications work. And so if you're looking for that kind of help, then please let us know after the webinar, and we will be happy to make some introductions to relevant partners in your part of the world. Okay, a couple more that were sent in earlier. Do we have a white label product ready for real estate? So we don't really have kind of white label sites in that sense, that we don't have a kind of single product that you can kind of just change the logos and change the look and feel and then start immediately. But we do provide a number of templates, front-end templates on that site, fundingthemeshub.com, which includes some real estate templates, and all of those are compatible with our backend. So if you want to take those and then use those as a starting point, you can very quickly build in the backend functionality and connect to our admin portal, and you can get to market quite quickly through that route. And we found that actually that's a much more kind of effective way of getting to market, is to kind of give you more flexibility to build on top of a template, rather than trying to kind of fit everyone into a process that we've designed, a kind of investor onboarding process and an accreditation process and everything else that we've designed. So we just kind of give you the building blocks for putting the sites together. We give you the front end templates as a starting point, and then you can take those and build yourself if you're able, or you can work with partners to go from there to a finished site. Another one that came in earlier, where can I find a list of the integrated services, the third-party services? So if you go to our website, the homepage of the website actually has a list of logos of companies that we have integrated into the API. So there are a couple of dozen there. It covers payments and ID verification and credit scoring and document management and escrow and all those sorts of things. If you are looking for a particular kind of service and you're not sure whether any of those cover it, then just get in touch and we will try and point you in the right direction. And then I think there was the last one I had. I don't know if there's any other questions just in the last couple of minutes. The last one was around, can you help with applying for regulatory licenses and how does that process work? So we're not a kind of not in a position to give any kind of legal advice or kind of or that sort of side of things on regulation. So we can't give we can't kind of be that hands-on, but a lot of regulators, if you're kind of applying to become a new finance marketplace and to become authorized, you can you have a fairly standard process usually, especially for countries like the UK and the US and some others that have encouraged this market, and often they would have some sort of requirement to provide information about how the back end works, how the data are stored, what kind of security policies are in place, how the backup kind of disaster recovery services work. So all of those kinds of technical questions we can certainly help with. As I said earlier on in the presentation, it's always you as the kind of the platform operator who's applying for authorization to run one of these platforms. So it's always going to be kind of you and your business and your directors and so on who would be doing the application. But if there's any kind of technical questions about how the systems work, then we can certainly support, and we've gone through that process many times now. I think that was all the questions. I can't see anything. Okay, there's one or two more actually just at the bottom. Is there any functionality for financial accounting, reporting and bookkeeping? So at the moment we don't have any third-party services connected for that kind of function. We have looked at, for example, using someone like QuickBooks, which provides a kind of API for handling those sorts of things. So we don't have any kind of functions built in at the moment for that, but we're always adding more third-party services for different processes like that. So if you wanted to kind of build those into to your platform, then we could look at adding it to the API as a new third-party service and then turning that on for your site. And last question, because I think we're just about getting to the end of the hour. What is the minimum system requirements? So there's no real kind of system requirements from our point of view. If you're setting up one of these front-end sites that connects to our API, then you would be using one of our kind of software development kits, we have support for, at the moment, PHP and Node.js. Typically you would be working with a front-end developer that has experience in one of those languages, so you actually don't need to use those software development kits. You can use the API directly as well. But that's really the only kind of requirement, that you would need to understand how, kind of in general, a sort of REST API works, and how to authenticate with it from your own site. And we can certainly help you to set that up. So there's no real kind of requirements in terms of server space or capacity or anything like that. Okay, I think we've covered everything. If any other questions come up, please let us know, and you can send me an email at the address there on the screen, paul@crowdvalley.com. If you're interested in the next webinar, as I said, it'll be in a month's time. So it will be on, if I just skip back, Wednesday the 7th of October. It will be about introduction to the API, so a bit more technical. Feel free to get in touch about any other questions or partners or anything else related to this, and we will send out the materials later on today. Thanks very much.